I'm good. I'm good. I'm just refreshing my memory here on what the hell I'm supposed to say.
And I'm here to make sure that your PowerPoint works.
Oh,
That's
okay, cool.
that's my one sole mission in life today.
Yeah.
Ooh, you got ASU on there.
Yeah. Universities like me. I'm not an academic.
So, up next, folks, we have Michelle McClellan, who's going to teach us a little bit about how we can maybe teach our communities a little bit more media literacy. And we all know that's a big problem. How do we fix it?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, is the mic okay? Doing okay? Okay. I want to talk a little bit. I'm hesitant to sort of do this presentation with you today because I know you're all very busy people, but I have another job for you. So hear me out. I don't think to belabor the problem that journalism and news consumers and citizens face in this country right now. I mean, the so-called fake news and disinformation crisis is upon us, and with it, public confidence in the news is hitting all-time lows. It's been sliding for a while. It was sliding even before we started seeing all this disinformation. But only 1 in 5 people nationally have a lot of trust in news, and fully 2/3 have some level of distrust for media. I would say that some of that distrust, I think, translates into confusion and skepticism rather than really out and out hostility towards news organizations. But still, it's a real problem. Locally, thank you. Locally, the picture's a little bit better. There's a little more confidence. The News Collab, which is the project I'm working with at Arizona State University, did a community survey in 3 towns where they're working with local news organizations to develop practices to increase trust in news and to increase people's understanding of how journalism works. And so this is a result, a couple of word clouds. One is, the one on the left is when a word association, people are asked what they think of when they hear the word news. And of course, right smack in the middle, this was earlier this year, is the word fake. So, and a lot of other negative words, bad, biased, newspaper, not a bad word, but still. The second one was when people are asked, what do you think about when you hear the words local news? And there we see a whole different picture. It's not that negative, at least in the big sense. The word fake came up, but it came up very rarely. So I think, you as primarily local news providers are in a really strong position. I would not recommend that you rest on your laurels here, because I think the effect of disinformation and information vacuums is insidious, and the problem is probably going to grow and leach into local markets before it gets better. But local news is in a stronger position. That said, the survey that the CoLab did showed that there's more work to be done. Generally, the respondents, there were 4,500 respondents in Macon, Kansas City, and Fresno. Those are the communities where the News CoLab is piloting its project. People generally felt like their local news organizations were not well connected with them. They gave 3 or lower on a scale of 5 on issues like credibility, trustworthiness, transparency, community engagement. And I would say I think these were seen primarily through the prism of legacy news organizations. The organizations that CoLab is piloting with in these communities are newspaper organizations. So it may be a different picture for you in your communities, but it probably isn't great. I think that's sort of the starting point. The other thing that the survey showed that in different communities, as many as 50% of the people were fooled by a fake story. They tailored the fake story to the specific community, and they showed them several true stories, and then there was a fake one in there. And people couldn't tell. And I don't know about you, but I experience that all the time. I see friends who I consider to be thoughtful, well-educated people sharing garbage. And because somehow it appeals to whatever sense of outrage they're feeling at the moment. It's a real problem, and I think we take for granted as journalists that people can discern, and they can't. And a lot of the garbage is really designed to be very difficult to tell. So what we're saying and finding in this environment is it's going to take a lot more than good journalism to fight the fake information, the fake stories, and the disinformation. Dan Gilmore, who's a co-founder of the CoLab project, talks about journalists are used to focusing on the supply side of the equation of news and information. So we're doing stories, we're creating news, but we all need to spend more time on the demand side, where the news consumers are. And the good news is that there are some emerging practices that will help newsrooms and news publications work with their audiences to help them better understand how the news works. What we've done at the CoLab is develop a cookbook of best practices for news literacy. There's about 30 or 35 of them, and they are all practices that have been proven. So they're not we didn't just collect good ideas. Every single one cites research or data that shows that the practices had some kind of an impact. They're generally organized around transparency, publish your policies, let people know what you're about, publish author bios so that people can understand the expertise that the writer is bringing to the story. Engagement is a huge area where you can communicate with people, listen to your users, your audience, and talk to them explain to them how you do your work, and listen to them, and really listen to how they're seeing your work. Because all of us, I think, at some level have biases that even though we strive and we struggle for objectivity, it starts with sourcing. Who do we talk to on any given story? I was a newspaper ombudsman for several years, a long time ago, so I fielded a lot of complaints about bias. It was invariably because our sources were very kind of limited to reporting what the officials said. And people didn't really see their concerns and their experiences. You'll hear that kind of stuff, and it'll really, really improve your coverage. And it will improve their loyalty to you. So a lot of these practices really enhance your relationship with your users, as well as helping them get better at understanding. Some of the practices are tools you can use. My favorite is one called the Hoaxy Botometer. And it takes sort of the hoax headlines of the day and shows how they're being spread on Twitter. And that's the hoaxy part. And then the Botometer distinguishes between Twitter accounts that look like real people and Twitter accounts that behave like bots. So you see, I think they're red and blue. I forget which is which, but you can kind of see something spreading and the degree to which bots are spreading it. And then finally, there are education programs, which may not be directly relevant to you as a journalist, but there are a lot of good education programs out there for people that people in your communities could really benefit from. And I'll talk about some of those. I'm going to blow through these two. That's just a couple of examples. So, what am I asking you to do? I'm asking you to invest in news literacy in your community, because I think it's not only an investment in our democracy, frankly, but it's an investment in yourselves. Like I said, I think it will really improve and enhance your relationship with your audience. First off, you can implement best practices from the cookbook. You can implement 1, you can implement 10. I'd recommend starting with a small number, 1 or 2, see how they work, and then expand from there. Figure out what works for you, figure out what makes sense. Again, I want to emphasize, these have been tried and proven. So it's not like, oh, please join us with this experiment. That said, in your particular community, one might work better than another. But I would definitely recommend start small, kind of, test it out. CoLab, as I said, developed a community survey. And it was very enlightening for the folks in the 3 communities. I mean, they thought they had a much better relationship with their users than they did. And so that really helped inform the newsroom about what they needed to do going forward. And it was the beginning of a really important relationship. People who took the survey wanted to know, okay, then what? What are you doing? So it's enhancing that connection. If you are interested in the survey, my last slide, I'll have a contact at News CoLab, or otherwise just give me a business card and I'll have somebody get back to you. The third thing I would say is look for local partners who can help, that you can help disseminate education. You're not going to be teaching news literacy necessarily. You could, but that's not really something where you as a publisher would have a primary role. But, you can connect your local libraries, your local schools with some of these resources because they are definitely out there. There are a lot of resources out there. I decided to limit my list to 5 because I think they're among the most accessible. One is the Trusting News Project at Reynolds Journalism Institute. That's Joy Mayer's project. They are heavily focused on engagement practices, and they are testing. They have, I think, 30 plus newsroom partners. They're testing and researching different practices. So I think they're a great source. The Trust Project is a little more focused on transparency. They have good research about the benefits of transparency in particular. In terms of education, the News Literacy Project has a really good online training program for middle and high school students. It's called Checkology. It is really good. They spent almost a decade doing classroom training, and then they've developed a really good online interactive. And the way that works is a school teacher signs up, and then the class is accessible to all the students through the teacher. So the teacher's engaged in teaching it. They've seen huge rates of better understanding of news. And I really want to emphasize that age group. I mean, that's That's where it needs to happen at this point. That's where students need a better understanding going forward. The Center for News Literacy, based at Stony Brook, now has an online news literacy class that is geared more towards adult learners. And finally, somebody mentioned LenFest, but if you are interested in some of our best practices, they're using Harken and Ground Source as vehicles for engagement in their news literacy efforts. And the CLEF grants, I think Joseph's here, the CLEF grants are ones where the LenFest Institute is providing funding for news organizations that want to subscribe to Ground Source or Harken for a period of time. So that might be good. I think they're taking applications now. I think they're in the third round. But that's another option. So anyway, I'm trying to go fast because I know we're behind. That's a lot to throw at you. But the main contact is Christy Roschke. She's the managing director of the CoLab, but I'm happy to hear from you and pass on any and all interest. CoLab is very interested in working with publishers like you, just because we know that you are close to your communities in ways that probably a lot of newspapers haven't been. We see that as a real advantage and a real strength from Lion members and publishers. So please, I hope you'll look into it. I wanted to take a couple questions if I have time, and particularly start with Charlotte Ann to talk a little bit about her experience.
Thank you so much. This is a subject that's really near and dear to my heart. And at Nowcast, we offer workshops in crap detection 101, as we call it. The fancy word is, of course, news literacy, media literacy, but it's crap detection 101, and that is derived from from Hemingway, as quoted by Howard Rheingold in SF Gate years ago in his column, which was entitled Crap Detection 101, and it was quoting Hemingway saying every man should have a crap detector inside of him. And Howard wrote about how he was writing for his daughter, how she could cut through things and figure out what was real and what was not real online, and it started an enormous online community that is actually global right now of people who have all contributed to links to hundreds and hundreds of links that are specific to occupations, journalists, teachers, and stuff. And all of those links are available off of our website. If you do a search on Nowcast SA for Crap Detection 101, you'll find links to all of that. And I think it's particularly important for us. Our offices are in a library, so we team up with the library all the time for media literacy stuff. But if you can team up with the library, that would be awesome because that also lends you additional credibility. I think we have a leg up over legacy media because in many instances people don't confuse me with media. They think of me as the trusted local source of information, and so we have a real benefit there and have people asking us for how do I tell what's real and what's not real online and to cut through it. So,
Any questions?
Not really a question, but in Norway we have this website called Actually, which is a website where journalists get together to, for instance, yesterday there was a story shared on Facebook in Norway that a family of immigrants had been given cell phones for $5,900 by the Norwegian government. And of course this was shared all across the racist Facebook groups, and also, as you said, people you think should know better share this story on Facebook, so it was kind of a fact. And today it turned out the story was a hoax, and that was done by that website called Actually, which consists of journalists from all around Norway, local news media, from the big media houses, where they actually get together to fight fake news like that. Is that maybe something you can look into to do? Create a network like that?
For the benefit of the live stream, because I don't know if you got really picked up well on the mic, you were talking about a Norwegian website called Actually that is debunking things. All right.
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard the question. question.
Oh, yeah, the question is kind of a network like that, a debunking network like that, to create a website. It's funded by all the newspapers in Norway, actually, and a lot of media houses to run this website. Would that be something you could look into creating here in the U.S.?
So
I'm not sure.
a collaborative effort amongst news organizations that otherwise compete, but working together to detect some crap.
Okay. Sorry, my ears are going. You know, I think it would be a good idea for news organizations to collaborate on a level of sort of surfacing resources for specific news organizations and sharing information about what practices work really well. On the other hand, one thing I know about local news, and you all are a great illustration of it, is one size does not fit all. It's going to be different in different communities. But I definitely think that news literacy needs to be on the agenda of every organization like Lion, ONA, whatever. I mean, it's something we all need to be talking about.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Appreciate it. Up next, we have Mike from Maps.com. And he's going to give us a quick rundown of what they've been up to.
More of a commercial than the other people we've had up here.
Mike, do you have a PowerPoint here?
No.
You don't? Okay.
Not this time. Which microphone? Can I use this one? Oh. Check, 1, 2. There we go. The star is born. Okay, first off, my name is Mike Klein. I'm the senior sales manager with a company called Maps.com. And I'd like to thank Lions for letting us participate as a sponsor. We have a table directly behind the check-in booth. If you need more information after our quick little synopsis here, I'd be more than happy to help you out. Also, we have a featured guest from the company. The CEO and chief bottle washer and all the good stuff, Mr. John Glanville, is in the second row up here. So if I don't have the answer, he does. Just by a quick show of hands, I'm kind of give you a pitch of what Maps can do for you, but everybody's still using classified ads, I would think, right? In one shape or another? Not so much? Okay. No? We got a way we can make more money for you. Basically, what we are known for in a nutshell is being able to take a classified ad, let's say like a garage sale listing, and populating the locations onto a map, and then sending that back to you, so that it could be embedded into a print run, it could be embedded into your website, or we can give it to you in a mobile application. And basically, when we send that back to you, you can do what you want with the product. And maps are a great tool to pull people's attention and readership abilities up more so than if you are just listing text copy information. So normally people will spend more time looking at an ad with a map than an ad that maybe not has a map. And in the acquire division, which is just one division of Maps.com, we offer a suite of products that we tie into parade of homes, new builds, real estate opportunities, open houses, and garage sales. And it's a great opportunity within those core products for you guys to increase your revenues as it relates to the activities that you may or may not be doing with those people. The company itself also would offer a sixth tier as it relates to those core suites, and I would call that the custom thing. And basically, when the custom, anything that you would need to beef up text or to add interest to an article, a crime map or a map that shows a specific part of Turkey because you're doing a travel article on it or whatever. We're the go-to guys for that, as well as a complete e-commerce division, a complete custom division, a complete educational division. We have about 25 people. We're completely self-contained, so you're dealing directly with the cartographers and the customer service people and the salespeople like me. And we kind of pride ourselves on going above and beyond for anything you could possibly think of when it comes to maps. So in a quick conclusion, our key customers are usually small to medium size online or print media, papers, newspapers, magazines, and in today's world, it's kind of nice to be able to outsource anything that has to do with maps, whether the development or the implementation of whatever the article might have that might be beefed up by a map. And we're kind of the go-to people from that standpoint. So you don't have to source that internally. You just pick up the phone, the email, or whatever. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you out. Any questions?
Yeah, my question.
Yes, sir.
We use maps in our crime reporting for locators, right? And our readers have always said that's really, we'd rather see it than read an
Yeah.
address, right?
Yeah.
So, and we also had a traffic. So again, we use maps. We embed them into our crime stories. We also had, and Uriah Kaiser from Potomac Local. We also had a traffic map because in Washington, D.C., traffic is lovely all the time.
Right.
And so we had a live traffic map on our homepage. And at some point last month or maybe a month and a half ago, Google said, we're going to start charging you for those maps. Can you speak to that? Google, charging, and how has that impacted your business?
Well, I do get that question every once in a while. It's like, why would I want to buy that product when I can just go to Google and do it myself? And my answer to that is it does easy, says hard, or says hard, does easy, whatever. And Google, a couple of things about them. When they're giving you information, they're only giving you the information that they feel is relevant. Okay, so if they keep getting traffic on a certain part of I-95 wrong on a continuous basis, maybe that's because the 3 gas stations located on that exit aren't, feeding the 8,000-pound gorilla. So with us, we're making the product just for you. So we will get it right for you from that standpoint. And yeah, and we love those, if you can dream it, we can make it kind of projects, because that keeps the cartography guys real happy, because they don't have to do the A to B thing as much. But it's really wide open. Traffic maps, crime maps, daily weather maps, any type of contingency. And also in a printed format, like if you needed something blown up as a wall map, or you wanted to have it laminated, mounted, and framed, those services are all available as well.
Thank you.
No problem. Yes, ma'am.
Most of your work more, is it more online or is it for print? Is there a type of map that people, that your client?
It's a little bit of everything, and it's tailored more towards whatever the customer's need is. But being a full service map company, we can supply it to you digitally printed. If you want, we can come by, wash your windows, and all that kind of good stuff too.
Well, don't say that.
No, that's all right.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
One thing we've all been talking about a lot over the last couple of years is reader revenue, trying to get subscriptions, donations, however that works out. And Lance Noble from Berkeleyside has extended that even further, and he's going to talk about how he turned his readers into actual investors in his business.
Dylan warned me that you'd have to see me fumble up here. How many here have enough money for their business?
Right here. See you later.
Great. You can leave. You can go to lunch early. Berkeleyside was founded in 2009, and very soon after we were founded, totally out of the blue, an angel appeared and offered us $50,000 because he liked what we were doing. We took that money, and basically until 2016, we bootstrapped from that. Obviously, we found ways to create revenue through advertising, through membership, through events, but it was all bootstrapped, which meant we were endlessly short of capital. If some crisis had occurred, we would not have had the money to cover it. We never had all that much money in the bank. We decided we needed to be better capitalized. We thought, we'll find 3 or 4 really rich people and we'll convince them to give us a lot of money. And we started talking to some people, and those talks weren't that bad. But when we were thinking about this, one of our readers got in touch with us and said, "Hey, I don't know if you guys need to raise money, but if you do, you'd be a really good candidate for this thing called a direct public offering." We had no idea what a direct public offering was, never had heard of it. But this guy, Bobby, who suggested it to us, told us it's a long-established way to raise money directly from the public. So, most investments, you have to go to qualified investors, essentially very wealthy people who, if they lose all their money, it's no big deal. They're sophisticated, they can handle themselves. You're not generally allowed to just go to your neighbors and say, "Give me money for my business," because the government, I think, has sensibly decided a lot of charlatans are around. If you allow people to just take money willy-nilly, a lot of people will be cheated. A direct public offering allows you to go direct to the public. No intermediaries. It's about Main Street rather than Wall Street. And that's, by the way, a picture of Berkeley's Main Street, which is actually called Shattuck Avenue. As I said, it's not new. The Green Bay Packers did a DPO. Ben & Jerry's did a DPO. So why did we decide to do a DPO? As I said, we needed money, like most of the people in this room. We liked the idea of going to the many rather than the few. We felt that was really something that fit with our character, that was organic to us. We were all about our readers, our community. That's what drives us. That's who we're serving. And the idea of going to our readers and saying, "Invest in us," seemed a very natural thing to do. We had to apply to the state. We needed a lawyer to help us through this process. In California, you have to work through an organization called the Department of Business Oversight, but all 50 states allow a DPO in some form. We actually, Yossi's here from Lenfest. I don't know if he's here this morning, but Lenfest has given us some funding to write a how-to guide on DPOs, and in that guide, we're going to have which is in the works, we're going to have a list of, in each state, who you need to contact. But a lawyer who is familiar with this, and I can suggest, somebody at least worth talking to, will know, in Vermont or in Maine or in New Mexico or wherever you happen to be, which organization in the state looks after this. And the big thing, if you're interested in raising money this way, is you have to be prepared to ask people for money over and over and over again. How did we structure this? One of the interesting things and one of the attractive things for us about doing a DPO is you can structure it any way you want, subject obviously to that regulatory approval, in our case from the state's Department of Business Oversight. So for those of you who are interested in finance, what we did is we said we're going to offer preferred shares. So no voting, no equity, no valuation. We were going to raise $800,000. We had the intention to pay a 3% dividend, but not guaranteed. It was, we'll pay the dividend when we can. No return of capital, barring sale or liquidation, and a minimum investment of $1,000. If you know anything about finance, probably everything I just said tells you this is the world's worst investment. And we were honest when we presented to people. If you're interested in investing because you think you're going to get a return at some point, go elsewhere. That is not a reason to invest in Berkeleyside. The reason to invest in Berkeleyside is because you care about the journalism we're doing and you want to support that. If you need to make money, do not do this. We were brutally honest to people. Where did we find our investors? We had a series of house parties, which were very, very effective. The three founders of Berkeleyside, myself, Tracy, and Francis, stood up in front of a room of people who had plenty of wine, some very good food, and told them our story, told them what we were doing. And although most of those people required follow-ups, at each of those house parties, we had probably 5 or 6 people who signed a check right there. And we asked for them to do that. This is, again, you have to ask people for money over and over. And if you're standing in front of a group of people, say, if you have your checkbook, we have the paperwork, we can do it right here and now. And that can be very effective. We did lots of emails to our list. We obviously did stories on Berkeleyside. And one of the reasons why our friend Bobby thought we'd be a great candidate for a DPO. First, he thought we did very good work, but unlike most businesses that do this, we have, and everyone in this room has, a built-in megaphone to contact your potential investors. A lot of the organizations, at least in Northern California that I know of, that do DPOs are things like a restaurant that's starting or a community grocery store. It seems the food business seems to really sort of like DPO as a method to raise money. They have no low-cost way of reaching thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. We can print something on Berkeleyside and we, for free, reach that. And so that was very powerful. We used social media, we did ads on our site, and of course, we called and met with people individually a lot. We built a dedicated website for our DPO. You can no longer invest through this, obviously, because we've closed, as this says, but if you go to invest.berkeleyside.com, you can still look at the website. And that obviously enabled us to get the information to people very easily, but we also had a part of the website where you could actually go through the 6 steps you needed to do the investment. The one thing you could not do was actually give us money through the website because for some reason or other, the state of California does not allow investments to be made through credit card payments. Somebody has to write a check to you. Or I guess they could give you cash, but we did not do that. You're probably wondering how long did it take? How much did it cost? We submitted our application to the Department of Business Oversight in February 2016. We received authorization to raise $800,000 about 5 weeks later. Our lawyers had said it generally takes 4 to 6 months, so we were totally blindsided by it being approved incredibly quickly. Authorization means the clock starts ticking. We had a year to raise the money. We launched our capital raising effort in September 2016. By year end in 2016, we'd raised about $500,000. Our authorization expired in March 2017. We reapplied to raise a further $500,000. We'd reached $560,000 by the time we had to reapply. So now, with the first tranche and the second tranche, we had authorization for a little bit over $1 million. We reached and crossed that $1 million goal in March 2018. We raised every penny we could, and we certainly believe we left money on the table. But maybe we'll go back at some point to those people. It cost, our legal expenses all told were about $35,000, so it's not free, but for raising $1 million, that's probably not too bad. And we spent, in terms of direct costs, we spent about $17,000. Catering for the house parties, as I mentioned, lots of wine, printed material, website, that sort of thing. Why did readers invest? I honestly think there was one reason, and that's because they care about journalism and they care about the work we do. They read us every day. They think this is incredibly important for the community. We spent a lot of time debating what perks should we offer investors. If you invest at this level, you get a gift basket. At this level, you get all these sort of total waste of time. If we'd had zero perks, we would have had exactly the same group of investors that we have. People invested because they want us to continue doing journalism. It really was as simple as that. What have we done with the $1 million? It's people. People are, like for many of us, people are our biggest cost. We hired a new full-time reporter. We increased our food editor to a full-time position. We hired a membership manager, and we started paying ourselves a little bit more. We did a mobile-first redesign. We increased the marketing of our annual Ideas Festival, and incredibly importantly, we actually have money in the bank. We expect to continue making losses on Berkeleyside for a few more years, and that money in the bank is what enables us to get to that point of sustainability, we believe. What lessons have we learned? Well, at least in our case, we were unprepared to be approved quickly. We wish we'd been better prepared. We thought we had 6 months to figure things out, and all of a sudden, boom, we were approved. You need to have one person drive the effort. We kind of, as we do many things, we managed as a triumvirate, and we decided probably about a year in, one of us needed to kind of take primary responsibility, and Frances, one of my partners in Berkeleyside, she became the person really driving it and really making sure, not necessarily doing everything, but saying, Lance, have you called these 5 people? You said you were going to call those 5 people. And you need to keep up the momentum. And I think you need to aim high. We could have aimed higher. We think we never thought we'd raise $1 million, but having done that, we think we probably could have raised more. So aim high. I hope that helps, but I'm very interested if you have any questions, really happy to help. Wait for the microphone so that it works on the live stream.
Uriah Kaiser, Potomac Local. Does state law preclude you from doing this again? I mean, how often could you do these DPOs?
You can do it as often as you get authorization. It does not preclude doing it again. What I will say, when we reapplied, so when we first applied, as I said, we got approval incredibly quickly. The woman at the Department of Business Oversight who handled our application kind of accepted, we submitted just our, management accounts to show our financials. When we reapplied, she said, same person, she said, when you first applied, since this was the first time you were doing it, I kind of gave you a pass. Now that you're reapplying, I actually want to see some real financials. Where are your audited accounts? And we said, we're not going to do an audit. That's ridiculous. We're a tiny company. The cost of an audit is nuts. And we convinced her to accept compiled accounts from, a proper accountancy firm. But we had to persuade it. I am certain if, let's say in 2 years' time, we go back and say, we want to do another, they'd say, we need to up the bar a little bit, maybe they'd insist on an audit, but, we want to see a full set of financials, let's make sure that, you've done this and this and this. But that's totally discretionary. It depends on which official is looking at your application.
Mike McNeil, MagnoliaReporter.com. Are you able to set any of this money aside and invest it so you can earn interest off it?
One of the interesting things about it is a lot of people say, oh, it's kind of like a Kickstarter or something like that. One of the very attractive things about this is when the first person wrote a check to us in September 2016, we could instantly use that money. So there's no restriction whatsoever on use of funds. We could have invested it all in Apple stock, and we probably would have done very well, or Netflix stock, even better. We didn't. We put it in the bank. We have a chunk of the money earning a little bit more interest, in a certificate of deposit. But, our Treasury Department, of course, which of course does not exist. In terms of managing the money, we are very, very conservative. We're not going to invest it in something that could go down as well as up. That just wouldn't kind of be on our agenda at all. But we could do anything we want, in theory. We could all have run off to Mauritius if we wanted to.
Hi, I'm Carol Shawarko from the Homewood Flossmoor Chronicle. It's a great presentation, thank you. Did you track any data about who your investors are, who gave you money? Can you offer any insights as to the age levels, income levels of people who invested?
I think it's a really good question. I'd say about half of our investors are Berkeleyside members. They'd been giving us $5, $10, $20 a month. But half of them weren't. Half of them are people we'd previously, maybe they were people we knew, but we'd previously had no real connection to. And some of the investments came completely out of the blue, and some significant ones. So as I said, it was a $1,000 minimum. We raised a bit over $1 million from 350 people, so you can do the math that the average is a bit over $3,000. But the biggest group of investors obviously were the $1,000 investors. We had a lot of $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, even quite a lot of $10,000 investors. Then it's a thin group. One or two people at $20,000. I think one person at $50,000, one person at $100,000. Most of them are older, unsurprisingly. And most of them are from the wealthier parts, and overwhelmingly they're from Berkeley. A few people were from Oakland and some other neighboring cities for us, but all local, 100% local. You had to be a California resident, but none of them are more than 15 miles away from us. We know, on the basis of certainly address of the investor, some of them were from pretty modest neighborhoods. So the $1,000 probably represented, not a significant investment for them, but I really want to do this, and this is, important to me, and I'm going to really extend myself at $1,000. Other people who invested $1,000, it was, yeah, sure, $1,000, why not? And some of those people we got to do $5,000, $10,000, or $20,000, but it was a bit of a mix. Some people have said, oh, well, of course this is going to work in a rich place like Berkeley. And there are plenty of rich people in Berkeley. There are also plenty of people who are not rich in Berkeley. And, what we have said to people is, if this is if you want to support Berkeleyside, and the $1,000 is just like, you must be joking, you can give us $1 a month, and that is supporting Berkeleyside. We want you to support Berkeleyside if that's what you want to do, and we will give you ways to do it. But if you have the means, you can do more. And I think, there are places where this probably isn't a good route, because it's really, really hard to find people who will give $500 or $1,000. I mean, of course, there are many communities like that, but there are more cities, that are roughly like Berkeleyside, with a population of people who can give a decent amount than, I think a lot of us assume. That's my sense of it.
I think we have time for maybe one more
And I'm obviously
question.
around, and you can grab me and talk about it.
Your hand popped up first, so you get it.
Hi, I'm Marcy Setlow from the Berkshire Edge, and I wonder, what are you doing to follow up? What are you doing with these people who invested? Are you, and how are you building their enthusiasm into something bigger?
That's a great question. If not everyone heard it, is what do we do to follow up? We send them a quarterly newsletter. We had a party for all of our investors that was, I think, hugely successful. People really wanted the occasion to come together and to celebrate each other for this. It was a very good event, and we kind of intend to do more and more to keep in touch with them. As I said earlier, we agonized about perks and things like that, and we offer a 3% dividend for when we can pay it. We've had a number of investors say to us, when you get around to being able to pay the dividend, don't pay my dividend. I want you to invest that in your reporting. The $3,000, or if they invested, the 3% of $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever, I'd rather you put it to what I want you to do. So people have been, keeping them involved has been the easy part in some ways.
Thank you very much, Lance.
Sure,
Appreciate
thanks.
you sharing that. Ladies and gents, lunch is served. I'm sure you're getting hungry, and see you back in here in about an hour.